Thank you to our Season 2 That Greenwich Life presenting sponsor, RMA of New York. RMA of New York is a full-service fertility center that offers fertility testing, IVF, egg freezing, male reproductive medicine, and LGBTQ family building. And with 14 clinics across Manhattan, Brooklyn, Westchester, and Long Island, they make expert care accessible. RMA of New York is changing lives and helping so many of us write our next chapter. Visit rmany.com for more info. There's a topic in this community that keeps coming up again and again. And when you all ask, I try my best to answer. Many of us spend the first half of our lives chasing a roadmap we created years ago. We imagine the town will settle in, Greenwich, of course, the career we'll build, the family we hope to have, the version of ourselves we expect to become. We picture it so clearly that we start to believe life is supposed to unfold in that exact order. And then one day you arrive, or you don't. And either way, you look around and realize you're standing in a very different place than the one you once designed in your head. You may be asking yourself, how did I end up here? Or maybe you're wondering, how do I get there? Or maybe you know you aren't where you want to be, but you don't even know where you're headed. This episode is for anyone in that quiet, unsettling in-between, the space where you've lived enough life to know things don't go according to plan, and you're trying to figure out what your next chapter looks like. If you've built the life you thought you wanted and still feel a tug for something more, it's okay. If your story looks nothing like you imagined it would, and you're wondering if it's too late to rewrite the script, it's okay. If you're craving clarity, direction, or simply the permission to evolve past who you've been, it's okay. You're taking the first step in sorting that all out by simply dedicating the next 60 minutes to this conversation. If you've been listening to That Greenwich Life, you know I try to lead with honesty and heart. And the truth is, nobody warns you how disorienting it can be to outgrow your own dreams, or how confusing it feels when the life you envisioned doesn't really match the life you're living, or how vulnerable it is to admit that you want something new, even if everything looks fine or successful on the outside. Today, with the help of my special guest, and I can't wait for you to meet her, we're going to talk about that moment, the moment where the future becomes a blank page again, a little terrifying, a little thrilling, and entirely yours. My hope is you will leave this episode with a sense of clarity, a sense of possibility, and a sense of relief that you're not the only one asking big, uncomfortable questions about purpose, identity, direction, and desire. You're going to feel more grounded in where you are and more hopeful, hopefully, about where you're headed. You'll leave with permission to pivot, expand, and redefine what fulfillment actually looks like for you now. Because you're not behind and you're not done. You're simply beginning a new chapter, one that's driven not by old expectations, but by who you are today. So let's get into it. Hi, I'm Dorothy, a reformed celebrity gossip girl. For more than a decade, I was a red carpet reporter and tabloid magazine editor in New York City, appearing on all your favorite TV shows, spilling the secrets of the stars. But now, I'm a mom of two living that Greenwich life in the suburb of Greenwich, Connecticut. And these days, I'm using my storytelling power for a purpose far greater than gossip. My own journey through infertility, IVF, and late-stage pregnancy loss taught me this. Everyone's carrying something hard, no matter where you live or how polished your life seems. That Greenwich life isn't about status or perfection. It's about honesty, healing, and the messy, beautiful middle ground between who we are and who we're becoming. It's about the resilience it takes to rebuild when things fall apart, and the experiences we all share that remind us we're never truly alone. I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad we're in this together. If you're a regular listener of this show, then you know my road to having my daughter was long, painful, and traumatic. I've shared parts of that journey with all of you because it's so important to have the right support during one of the hardest times in your life. That's what makes this season's presenting sponsor, RMA of New York, so special. They're not just fertility doctors, nurses, and embryologists. They're a full team walking beside you every step of the way. RMA of New York is a full-service fertility center that offers fertility testing, IVF, egg freezing, male reproductive medicine, and LGBTQ family building services. And with 14 clinics across Manhattan, Brooklyn, Westchester, and Long Island, expert care is always within reach. I also have to shout out Dr. Lucky Seacon, board-certified reproductive endocrinologist, infertility specialist, and author of the upcoming book, The Lucky Egg, which is all about understanding your fertility with warmth and humor. RMA of New York is changing lives and helping so many of us write our next chapter. Visit rmany.com for more info. Hey, I'm Dorothy Cascerceri Simone, and welcome back to another episode of That Greenwich Life, Season 2, presented by RMA. Today has been a rush to the finish to get here in the studio. I spent the first portion of my morning, which, by the way, it's right now only 10 a.m., so we're not talking like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I've already been to my son's school and back for teacher conference. Went really well, thank goodness. He's working really hard in school, so I feel relieved and got a little pep in my step from that today. But also woke up to the refrigerator and freezer lights both off. Checked the breaker, checked all the things. I'm pretty sure that the Sub-Zero refrigerator freezer in our house that is old as a dinosaur has finally decided it is done, it quits. And so that's going to be a fun purchase to make. But what a chaotic morning. I was just waiting for like the next crazy thing to happen. It's always that way. But as you guys know, mom life and work life, they kind of blend into one. But I'm in the studio now, and that's all that matters, and have a really, really exciting episode for you. My special guest is sitting here in the studio with me, and I want to just quickly introduce her and talk about her. This woman, and by the way, if you're watching on YouTube, which you should be, by the way, the links are all at my Instagram at Dorothy on TV and on my website, DorothyOnTV.com. But if you're watching on YouTube, you are going to have to just grab a quick peek of how beautiful my guest is sitting here in studio. She has done so much already with her life. She's actually celebrating her 35th wedding anniversary today. Okay. So not only is she beautiful, but she is also going directly to heaven. She is saint-like, because I'm pretty sure that I could not make it to 35 years without committing homicide with my husband. So we'll see. Stay tuned to how that goes for poor John. But anyway, she's done so much already, and she is really the authority on what we're going to be talking about today, which is reinvention and that second act, kind of like using who you've been and all the skills that you've developed to become who you really are and who you are currently, with all of your new skills that you kind of learn along the way. Things like Canva, for example, that I have learned in the last year. Also, constant contact, which is a new skill that I am learning. My newsletter actually is looking pretty good. I'm pretty proud of my newsletter. You can subscribe to that, by the way, on my website. Quick little plug for the newsletter. But anyway, so this woman is a content creator, a speaker, and writer, and she is the host of the globally ranked award-winning podcast, Mom to More. Okay, so definitely check that out. Her show spotlights the often untold stories of moms navigating reinvention and rediscovering purpose beyond raising kids. Now, she knows a little bit about this because she is a former New York advertising creative, and she spent 2 decades just about as a stay-at-home mom to her 3 kids, who are all now grown up and live in different places around the country. I dread the day that comes. I can't even imagine Gemma and Nicholas living in other places. But I know that everything between now and then will prepare me for that moment. So I'm ready. But anyway, she is really teaching the masterclass on reinvention and starting over and starting anew. And her name is Sharon Macey, and I'm so happy to have her today. Welcome to the show.
Hey, girl. Hi, Dorothy. I'm so thrilled to be here. Thank you for that lovely intro.
Of course. I'm so grateful that you are here to lend all of your expertise, because I think this whole idea of what's next, or what haven't you really done that you always had your heart set on, and how do you do it now? I think it really applies to a lot of our listeners. In fact, I know that it does, because I'm just going to share really quick. As you guys all know, if you've been listening, That Greenwich Life Live was my big event on November 19th. Sharon was there.
It was so amazing. What a night. What a night.
Thank you for
congratulations to you for that, because that is huge.
Thank you for saying that. It was a lot of fun. It was
you know how to throw a party.
I do know how to throw a party. I'm very good at that.
Another one of your skill sets.
Yes, yeah. Thank you. But yeah, Sharon was there that night, and what I asked all of the women who attended in advance was I asked them to share some of the things that they wanted to hear more about because if you guys haven't tuned in yet, it was basically like an elevated cocktail party at the Hyatt Regency in Greenwich and then followed by a live podcast taping that we did like with a seated audience of like 125. I was on stage. We had a whole podcast studio set up and it was really fun. And everybody had great ideas for topics, but there were a few topics that came up again and again and again. And if you all tuned in last week, you heard from my guest, Julia Jaffick, Lemon Stripes, at Lemon Stripes on Instagram, about one of those topics. And that was navigating female friendships when you are older and in the stage of life that many of us are in, and how kind of that can be complicated and you can't really find time for yourself, and how are you going to find time for your friends? And we really dug deep into a lot of that, and it was an awesome episode. So go back to episode 4 and check that one out. But the other topic that came up, and I am going to let you talk, I promise.
Just drink my tea.
This is how people in my family feel because I'm kind of constantly talking, although my son's pretty good at that too. But the other topic that came up again and again was this idea of, what am I doing next and where am I kind of going? What advice would you give to women who feel they are starting over in life, career, or motherhood was one of the questions. And then I got this message after the event, in addition to all of the people that wanted this. And that's when I messaged you and I was like, Sharon, are you available? Come on and let's talk about this. But this message was really cool. So I'm just going to read it really quick. We plan our lives. We plan what we want to do and where we want to live, how many kids we want, what we want to do for work. But now we're past all that. We've accomplished it. And I love this part. Or we haven't. But what's next?
Right. What is next?
So.
And we can all create that.
That's right.
Yeah.
And you're here to kind of give everybody a starting point. Right? Because it's the overwhelm, I think, that keeps everybody where they are.
It does. But I also want moms to realize they've already started, right? There is no starting from scratch. You're starting from experience, because everything that you have been doing as a mom, whether you are a stay-at-home mom, whether you're like a hybrid mom where you're working like what you are and raising kids, you are learning so many valuable things, so many skills that will serve as the foundation for whatever it is you want to do next in your next chapter.
That's a really good point. So it almost feels like maybe the first thing is a mindset reset, instead of saying, well, how could I possibly go back to school and become a therapist, for example? I don't know.
But people have done that.
Well, right. Of course.
Yeah.
Of course they have. But I think people have like limiting beliefs sometimes. Like, how could I possibly go back to school? I haven't been a student for so long. I haven't been in college, in 20 years.
Right.
But to your point, you're saying that there's a lot of things that we've all done between then and now,
right,
that set us up perfectly to become a student again.
Right. And it's funny you mentioned that, because over the pandemic, I went back to school.
Oh,
I did a
congrats.
course. Thank you. I did a digital marketing strategy course at Kellogg. It was all online. And I got to tell you, and everything was online. I didn't know what I was doing. I am such a tech boob. The very first assignment, of course, I submit it, and then it's like late. And I thought,
no.
Oh my God, what am I going to do? But I learned a lot, and I realized, yes, you can go back to school if that's something you want to do. There's so many online courses. If there's something that, interests you, absolutely. Why not?
And let's be honest. I mean, how many of us were helping our kids do the online learning during COVID and homework? I mean, we basically are, in addition to chefs and chauffeurs and personal stylists and hairstylists, we are also tutors.
Tutors and teachers. Yep, absolutely.
And so even though it might feel like, and I'm just using this as one example, right? Maybe it's somebody saying, well, I really want to go back to work in the city, like 5 days a week. But how am I going to possibly do that? I'm so busy with the kids at home. But you're saying that there are so many skills that you've picked up in the last, decade or so, that
20 years.
Right, 20 years.
Yeah.
That help you transition more than you think they do.
Right. But I want to backtrack for a second and remind moms that think about the things that you have put aside, right? We all had dreams. We all had things we love to do and hobbies and passions. And I'd say I would start there first. It's like, think about the things that you might have put aside for the kids and thinking, is that something that I want to go back to? It could have been a career. I dialed back my advertising career, totally put that on ice. Although, like friends would call me and say, oh, you're so good at a headline, I need a headline, or I need an idea, that sort of thing. So I sort of kept my fingers in it and then went back to school and really dove deep into it. But it's just a reminder that think about what you love to do. I knew I needed to go back to my writing. I really, really missed that. And so having the ability to go back to school, and then I ended up as a brand and content strategist with an online company. We brought a new brand to market. And again, my youngest was in high school, so I definitely had more time. And I can appreciate if you've got littles, that's definitely more challenging. So you really have to look at what stage you are in life, where you are, how old your kids are. But it's super common, Dorothy, for women to, once the kids are in school full time, to say, okay, I've got that 9 to 3 window and I can make something happen in there. And I've even interviewed several women who do just that.
Definitely. It sounds like a lot of women definitely do have to take into consideration where they are in terms of where they are in their motherhood journey. Yeah. Because the mom to the high schoolers, they do say bigger kids, bigger problems. So maybe you're dealing with a kind of more, after school or whatever, but you're not so hands-on.
Exactly.
I'm still changing diapers.
I know.
Although we are going to be potty training soon. But
that'll be fun.
I dread that. I don't know why. I don't know. Diapers are easier, I think. But I think that women do have to think about where they are, right? But I will say to the moms who do have young kids, what I've done has been completely mental, because my first season of That Greenwich Life, I recorded 44 consecutive episodes weekly.
Huge.
And I don't recommend that, especially when you have a 1-year-old. But I did get to the point, and you can go back to season 1 and listen to the very last episode of the show. I did make it a point to decide, you know what, I'm wrapping my season, because even though I'm on this path of reinvention and I'm reemerging, I really don't want to miss a lot of what's going on with the kids, right? Because the little phase is just so fleeting, and it goes by so fast, as you know.
It is, and it's so precious. And I remember when our son was born. He's 31. My dad came to the hospital, and he said, "Tomorrow he'll be in kindergarten."
Yes,
and he was so right.
Yeah,
and then you blink, and they're graduating high school.
I know.
I mean, it's so fast.
I know. I really do feel that way too. My sister-in-law got married last month in Carmel, California. And so Nicholas, my 10-year-old, wore a tuxedo because he was the ring bearer. And I just looked at my husband and said, like, with tears in my eyes, like, it's going to be his senior prom tomorrow, and then it's going to be his wedding. And I'm going to be, dancing with him at his wedding.
You'll be ready. And I danced with our son at his wedding. That was so emotional. But you'll be ready for that, right? Because you think, oh my God, they're going to be going away at some point. You are going to be emotionally, physically, mentally ready, because our job as moms is to give our kids wings. And by the time they go off to college, we've done that job.
Yeah, that is really true.
Beautifully, right? We've done that job.
Well, I'm glad that you feel that way, and I'm glad that you can say that. I think not every single mom is lucky enough to be able to say that when they go off to college. They might still be dealing with some difficult behavior or some lack of responsibility that they're still witnessing and things like that. Right. So, but you're right. It is our job, and it is a nice feeling when you feel like you have done all that you can do.
Right.
So we'll get there eventually.
And are there issues? Absolutely.
Right. Of course.
God, nothing's
everywhere.
Perfect.
No.
My gosh, there is no perfection in life. Learned that a long time ago.
No, there's not.
Yeah.
No, there's not. What would you say to the women who just keep relying on the excuse, I just don't have the time to pursue the thing that I really want to?
Okay, so you don't have to jump into it 100% right now. If there's something that you are thinking about, you have a book, like a children's book that you've been wanting to write, or you have an idea for a business, or you are even thinking of maybe doing something on Instagram that's a little more focused with a passion of yours, or going back to dance or art or whatever, you don't have to jump in 100%. You just sort of dip your toe in. And I think that's important to try to figure out at first, well, what is it that really floats my boat? You know, what is it? Like, I know I went back to my love of dance. I had put it aside for so many years and finally found a studio that actually taught adults and not just kids ballet, and slowly got back into that. So I think, you know, take the time. We have the benefit of time right now with younger kids to kind of go, well, what is it that I think I really want to do? And it is never too early to start thinking about what you think your next chapter could be. Because, again, baby steps. You can start thinking about what would I need to do that. If I can write 15 minutes a day, like if I had an idea for a book, and I can write 15 minutes a day, that's brilliant.
That's a big accomplishment.
That's a
even
huge
though it
accomplishment.
even though it might feel like small potatoes.
Right, but it's not, because the little things build on each other, and all of a sudden you look back and you're like, oh, I've got like 5 chapters so far.
That's a really good way to look at it. So even if you're picking up Legos off the floor,
Been there.
you can you can still be thinking about what you want, what do you want that feels like more to you. Not, by the way, not that you're unsatisfied with where you are, and not that you're unhappy with where you are. This is not a black and white topic. This is not a binary conversation.
No, this is an evolution.
This is an evolution. And also this is the kind of thing where you have to be able to hold several things at once. So you can be happy where you are as a mom.
Right.
You can also be wishing for more for yourself. You can also be glad that you've evolved past where you used to be, but you can also be longing for certain parts of where you used to be.
Right.
And so
That's really common.
Yeah. And so it's okay to kind of have all of these. You don't have to have your brain all like sorted and your mind made up exactly what it needs to be. You know what the most important part of this show is? You. Yes, you. The person listening while you're dropping the kids at soccer, folding laundry, or walking your dog. You make this show what it is, and it's your support, your time, and your energy that brings it to life every week. So can I ask a quick favor? It'll take just 20 seconds, I promise. Head over to Apple Podcasts or Spotify, hit that follow button so you don't miss new episodes, and leave a quick rating or review. Another great way to spread the love? Pop the link to the show or your favorite episode into a group chat so more friends can check it out. These small gestures make a huge difference, and most of all, they help the message reach someone who needs it the most. As always, be sure to follow me on Instagram at DorothyOnTV, and check out DorothyOnTV.com for the latest updates and to shop our brand new merch. And now back to the convo. I hear also you talking a little bit about how women need to give themselves some grace when they're pursuing something new and different and unfamiliar.
Right. Right. I think grace is because we're so programmed to think, I've got to do it, and I've got to do it really well, and I've got to do it now or yesterday. And, life is, it sort of lays out in front of you, and it I'm older than you are, and so I can sort of look back and say that with affirmation that we are allowed to give ourselves grace. We should give ourselves grace because we are doing so much raising the next generation of humans. It's an extraordinary job. And, one thing I'd love to say to moms is, if people ask you, well, what are you doing now? And if you've sort of dialed back your work and you are home with the kids, never, ever, ever say, I'm just home with the kids.
Right. I agree. Yeah. There's no just to
There's
that.
no just anywhere. And in fact, I wish I had this line 20, 30 years ago where I would have said, well, I have the privilege of raising the next generation of humans. What are you doing?
I have
throwing it back to someone at a cocktail party. Yeah.
I have the privilege. Okay, wait. Say that again.
I have the privilege of raising the next generation of humans. What are you doing?
I love that because this old idea of stay-at-home mom, like that's not even really a term anymore.
Right.
Stay-at-home mom doesn't even mean anything because frankly, you're never really even home.
Exactly.
You're constantly shuttling.
You're living in the car.
Yeah, you're living in the car.
Yeah.
Living in the car. And, also we're talking a lot about moms, but I do have a lot of listeners who are not moms. And it's some of them by choice and some of them are on the road to becoming moms. But I do think that this pertains to really all women.
Absolutely.
That, are in a certain time of their life and they see maybe a different future for themselves.
Right.
Contentment is a beautiful place to land, but also contentment can sometimes be confused for complacency.
Right.
And so I think this generation of women, we're different than maybe our grandmothers. Not that our grandmothers were complacent, but our grandmothers and our great grandmothers, they didn't have all of the opportunities that we have. They didn't have all the access to things that we had, and they certainly didn't have Zoom and Google and Chat GPT.
Plus, I don't think there were the expectations.
Right. And there were different expectations on them. Exactly. So I think the reason that a lot of women are avoiding being complacent is because this is kind of like the dawn of a new era where we all have the ability to raise our kids and also pursue the things that we want to pursue.
Right.
So going back to the the message that I received from the listener, what do you say? Because she kind of touched on two things, which I think is interesting because it's really like there's two sides of it. What do you say to the woman who's accomplished all the things that they set out to do, and now they're sitting in their house and they're looking around and they're feeling grateful and they're, fielding text messages from their assistants and their staff and they've built this great business. What about those women? I mean, aside from the fact that, we're super envious of them now, what do you say to that woman in terms of like how she kind of proceeds forward and looks to her future?
And is this a woman with kids or without kids?
Let's do both.
Okay. So I say a woman without kids who, women reinvent their lives. We have the incredible ability to sort of morph and change into whatever it is that we want to do. So I say for someone who is maybe, the midlife, because that's when these things really start brewing, it is absolutely possible to pivot to something else or maybe start with a side hustle, something that you've loved to do, and watch how that can grow into a business. Watch how a passion or a hobby can grow into a next chapter of life. I'd say for a mom, be in that moment. As we just talked about a moment ago, Dorothy, it goes so fast.
Yes.
And so really embrace that time and put everything that you did in your career prior into those kids that you're raising. But you know that you still have that skill set of what you did before. I was a writer in advertising before. I will always be a writer in advertising. Even though I didn't do it for many, many years, you always have that innate skill set. It's part of who you are, part of your DNA. And so allow yourself that time, if that's what you want, right, to lean into the family life and think of all the things that you're doing, right? You are maybe you've got leadership roles in the PTA. You are working with nonprofits. Think of how much money you raise because you co-chaired that event and you raised $100,000 or whatever the amount is. You have the ability to, I don't want to be pejorative about this, but like baking cookies. Okay. I interviewed a woman who was so good at doing that. Her family's like, you've got to start a business. She started a cookie business.
Yeah.
I mean, and she sells them all over the country.
What's the name? I love cookies.
It is MF Cookies, spelled with a K.
Oh,
those are her
cookies.
initials,
Okay.
even though we know what MF also means.
Right. MF Cookies. That's cute
MF
with
Cookies,
a K.
yeah. And she's on, so MF Cookies with a K.
That's cute.
Mary Fran. And so I think you have the opportunity to think about, all right, what are the skills, as a mom, what are the skills that I am honing while I'm raising my kids? And it's everything from like, leading with compassion, organization, the various leadership skills we just talked about. You are a cook, and you're a nutritionist, and you are a medical advocate. Think about all those things that we do for our kids. A lot of times those can become a next chapter in your life.
That's a really good point, because a lot of the volunteering that we do,
Yes.
and I think sometimes there's a stigma around volunteering, because while it is a really important thing to do in your community, I think sometimes especially I feel like in Greenwich, it has like the connotation of like, oh, you're just like a bored housewife and you're volunteering, which is a terrible
Not
way
at
to
all.
think about it.
First of all, who's bored?
Well,
home
right,
with
right.
if you're raising kids,
Right.
there is no
No one.
time to be bored.
No one. But also I think, if you have the time to volunteer, I think it is sometimes considered like that's a privilege. There's a lot of women who are working 50 hours a week and they don't have that time to give to the kids' school,
Right.
But also that's why we're a community. That's why
Right.
there are some women who are there at the school and doing it and some women who aren't, because we're helping one another. We're
Right.
all working together. But also with volunteering at my son's school, they asked me to do the live auction at his big annual fundraiser.
Not surprised.
And
Yeah.
it makes sense, right? But I wasn't doing a lot back then. I was really in the depths of my infertility journey and a lot of loss and a lot of trauma. And I was in a pretty dark place. And they gave me the microphone and gave me the spotlight. And it was Alice in Wonderland themed. And so I was
That is
dressed
so
up.
you.
I know, right? And also that's like my favorite story from like my childhood and being like my favorite movie of all time. I wrote my very first newspaper column comparing myself to the bubbly blonde protagonist that is
Oh, I
Alice.
love that. I love that.
I've always just felt a lot of similarities to her in a way. And so I'm up there it wasn't even a stage. It was like this, exercise box or something. But I was up there dressed as the Queen of Hearts. And I was screaming off with their heads. And I was raising money for my son's school. And that was my first live auction that I did. And then each year they invited me back to do it again. And I went from $30,000 the first year to over $100,000.
Which is huge.
The fourth year. And by the way, I didn't do it myself, but the live auction itself went from, made a really large jump. And now people are hiring me
Right.
to do the live auction at their big galas and their big
Exactly.
events.
Exactly. And think
Which
about
is
how that
crazy.
began. Standing on a soapbox, right? As you
Right.
said, really small, but then it starts to catch on. And I think I say women can be so dismissive of the little things that we do, which really are very big things in its infancy.
Yes.
And
That's a
we
great
need
point.
to give ourselves, acknowledge that. It's like, okay, I was volunteer of the year at one of the nonprofits that I sat on the board of. I had no idea that was happening. But I was proud of that because I was changing these little kids' lives.
Mm-hmm.
I do a lot of work with Newark Stanford Grassroots Tennis and Education, so shout out to them. And, to really change a life, that is, you're raising your own kids, but to put your heart out there and to help change a life
Yes.
of someone who is not your child,
Mm-hmm.
that is so beautiful and fantastic. But I think of what, you just realize that you've got an amazing skill set doing that. And I think women have to start to recognize all the things that we do, whether it's just in everyday life, within our community, at our kids' schools, managing a household, which is huge. We're I used to say, okay, I'm the mom, but no, I'm the CEO of my family.
Yes.
And you are too.
100%.
Yeah.
The CEO with some support staff, but not a lot.
Exactly.
The CEO that doesn't have a secretary but desperately needs one.
Desperately needs one. I know.
I am hiring an assistant, by the way, if anyone's listening. And if you know anyone, reach out to me, DM me on Instagram at Dorothy on TV. But yeah, and I think the other thing is, we have to go slow and be patient with ourselves, which you talked about. There is this, fake timeline that many of us put ourselves on.
Right.
I did it for sure during my fertility journey. I felt like I needed to have a baby yesterday. And weirdly enough, for all the things that I went through, and I ended up having my daughter Gemma, and my kids have this amazing, just about, 7.5-year age difference, which I deemed as like the worst thing. And I'm so behind. And why is it taking so long and all these things? And looking back, I'm so grateful for it because it makes it somewhat more manageable for me, which it's not manageable at all. But my nervous system, I think, has healed a lot, but it still is limited. And so I think that age difference works for our family. And also the relationship and their bond is everything. And so I would say, certainly I would caution people to never put this artificial timeline on yourself,
100%.
especially when it comes to digging deep and figuring out what's next for you.
Right. Absolutely. Don't put a timeline on it.
I did that first live auction and emceed that event 5 years ago. My son was in kindergarten, I think, and he's in 4th grade now. And it wasn't really until this year that I went and met Lydia Finette, who is like
she's the bomb. I know, yeah.
She is, for anybody who doesn't know, I feel like I talk about her every single episode, but she is a huge mentor for me. And I went and did this retreat that she hosted, the Most Powerful Woman in the Room retreat, and met with her and talked about the live auction. And for anyone who doesn't know, this is like the best way I describe her. She auctioned off Elton John's piano for like over $300,000 while he was playing it with him on stage.
That's amazing.
This is the level at which this woman is doing live auctions. She's the GOAT. But it wasn't until, 4 years later that I really started to pursue this as something that could be like a kind of a reinvention of sorts.
Next Lydia Finette.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
She's fabulous. She's really fabulous.
Amazing. Yeah, she's really amazing. And also, in telling that story, the other thing that I want to say, and I'd like to hear you talk about this, Sharon, is, when you're doing something new and when you're doing something different, keep your ears open and your eyes peeled for the little tiny things that the universe is trying to tell you and show you throughout that process to try to kind of dangle that carrot and lead you where you're going.
Right.
Because it wasn't really until I met Lydia and I reached out to her intentionally, I'll talk about that in a second, that I started pursuing live auctioneer gigs as like a paid thing.
Right.
She gave me like the confidence and almost like the canonization that I needed to quell all the self-doubts of me saying, well, I'm not a live auctioneer. But yes, I am. I spent a decade on television. I mean, I've been talking for a living my entire career.
And yet you still had imposter syndrome.
And I still had imposter syndrome, yes. And I want to talk about imposter syndrome too, because especially with reinventions and pivots, that's a huge part of it. But what was funny is the first year that I did the live auction, somebody said to me, you remind me so much of Lydia Finette. You're amazing. You like do such a great job. I've seen her. You guys like seem like you could be twins, And I didn't know who that was, and nor did I pursue it. Second year, different person came up to me. Lydia Finette. I was in the midst of a lot of things.
You guys were meant to meet. Yeah.
And then the third year, it was like a week before I went in to give birth to Gemma. I was like, my stomach was sticking out to here.
Wait, you
on
did
the
it a
stage.
week before you?
I went to the hospital the next morning.
Oh my gosh.
Because I thought I was going to be having her the next morning. And my doctor sent me home and I had her the following week. But, third year, now it was 2 separate people telling me, Lydia Finette. And then the fourth year, I was like, all right, this is ridiculous. Why am I not paying attention? Like the universe is leading me somewhere. So
they're banging you on the head.
Banging me on the head, literally.
Yeah.
And so, I do think that it's important when you are moving into transitioning your skill sets into something new.
Right.
I think it's important to listen to those little whispers.
Yes.
Because they guide you.
They do.
Hey moms, dinner doesn't have to be a hassle any night of the week. Constantino's of Greenwich makes it easy with delicious homemade options for everyone in the family. The best pizza, pastas, salads, sandwiches, and chicken dishes. And don't forget the ice cream. The cannoli flavor is my favorite. Your kids, like mine, will be begging you to order from Constantino's. And with pickup, delivery, and catering, it couldn't be easier. Visit ConstantinosOfGreenwich.com for more.
I think it's also important, even though what we think we're doing doesn't really matter, I say pull out the notes in your phone and just jot something down, right? That you did MC a school event, or that you were, you had a leadership role in a nonprofit, or you, someone asked you to be part of a project. Maybe you're building the elementary school playground. It needed to be torn down and you're on the committee. I mean, like, that's project management.
Even if you planned your kid's birthday party.
Exactly. Those are events.
And did
family gatherings.
Yeah.
That's another event.
I mean, my son's birthday party, his 4th birthday right before COVID. I had 130 people, and it was super. It was
a small, intimate little gathering.
Small, and it was superhero themed.
Right.
So every single kid, there were like 50 of them, had capes with an iron-on decal of their first initial, and then Spider-Man came and did like a live fight, like pretend fight with the Green Goblin, which I'm pretty sure the Green Goblin is still in therapy over that, because the kids were like mobbing these poor people. And then Captain America showed up, and it was a whole thing. And honestly, like, I could have turned that into a business. What I did there, I could have turned into
like
a
an
business.
event planning business.
Well, what I did a couple weeks ago with That Greenwich Life Live.
There you go.
Like, I mean, I had.
So clearly you know how to put on an event.
Yeah.
And I think what we're sort of skirting around, but we haven't said yet, is that life, being a mom and being in this phase of life, it is a life masterclass.
Yes.
Think of all the things that you are doing that you might blow off, but they are worthy of your attention, right?
Yes.
People were whispering to you, you needed to meet Lydia. You clearly know how to put on an event. I've seen it. It was amazing. Clearly, you know how to, do an auction. Clearly, you know how to do a podcast. And so we have so many sort of hidden skills. I call it sort of like the hidden mom resume of things that we just do on a daily basis. But those little things, maybe not so little, what we perceive as like no big deal little things, are really things that can inform where we go from there. Like, I knew that I always wanted to write. And so for me to get back to my writing was really fabulous. But I also learned as a mom, I listen to the kids. I think one of my big skills is I really learned, you have to learn to listen to your kids and to read a room and to get the unspoken body language and to understand that. But things like that, skills like that, can lead you into whatever it is you think you want to do next. And there's so many things and so many niches. So I'm not going to start, telling people what they can do, but just know that all the skills that you have can help inform where it is you want to go.
And I think that there's something that keeps coming up in this conversation that I want to unpack a little bit more. Why do we keep feeling like all of the things that we do are kind of like, we call them like the little things that we do? Why do we feel like they're little? Why do we feel like the volunteering at the school, or the being there for, whatever, the pumpkin patch or the parade? Like, why can't we have a better mindset about how those things are the most important things, not only from the perspective of the current role that we're in, which is mom, but also of advancing forward and creating the next chapter for ourselves.
Right. I think if people look at those little things, and I'm doing air quotes for those of you not watching, we need to write those things down. We need to keep some sort of a journal where we talk about what we perceive to be the little things. And is it society? I don't know, Dorothy. I mean, what do you think? Is it, is it where we live? Is it this whole Fairfield County area in Connecticut? But I think a lot of us feel, I want people not to feel that way. I want people, if you're going in and you are, president of the PA, or you're on the PA board, that is big. But think of all the leadership skills that you're gaining from that. Think about how you work with a variety of people. You can talk to anybody. You can manage a crisis.
Yes. For sure.
Right? That's just life. That's like Mom 101, but
definitely managing crises, that's for sure. I feel like the the other weekend when my son was having, and I talked about this on Instagram, when my son was having his 10th birthday party, I like took the cake out of the freezer, the ice cream cake, no less, put all the candles on it, 10 candles, lit the candles, walked in slowly singing happy birthday. And my son came barreling toward me, almost knocked the cake out of my hands because he had a bloody nose. And so nose is gushing blood, the cake is melting, the candles are burning, right. They're burning all the way down. They're
Crisis
melting the cake.
management.
Crisis management.
Yeah.
I mean, also for women who are just thinking about what they're doing at work, right? If they're in a role at work and they feel like what the things that they're doing are kind of meaningless, or they're the little things like we talk about with volunteering at the school. I think we probably do have to work a little bit harder collectively and pat ourselves on the back a little bit harder in acknowledging the things that we are doing and not necessarily like what we're not doing.
Right.
I think that's a really big part of it. I think that we look at all of the tasks, the responsibilities that we have, the places where we're involved in things. We look at that as just part of our to-do list, things to tick off the to-do list. Like, gotta get to school by 2:15 with the cornbread muffins for the 4th grade Thanksgiving.
Right.
Like, check, and we don't see that it's a larger contribution, and we don't see it as an accomplishment.
It's an accomplishment.
We don't see it also as a little, now I use the word little again. See?
Yeah.
See, I just keep doing it. But we don't see it as a significant part of our day that's shaping the rest of our day. And that's kind of shaping the next thing that we do. And maybe at that cornbread muffin drop-off, maybe you meet a new mom.
Right.
And you hit it off. And maybe you want to take a Pilates class together.
Right.
And maybe she gets you into what's that thing that people are doing? Needlepoint.
All right. It's back.
Oh, it's way back. Yeah.
And it's interesting you mentioned that, and I'm glad you brought that up, is that the power of community, the women that we meet in our journey, whether they're other moms or maybe they're teachers or just other women that we know who are working, you never know when a relationship could spark something else. Right.
That's exactly right.
A friendly relationship with another mom, with another woman, maybe someone has an idea. Maybe someone's like, I really need to redo my resume. And that might be something that you're really good at. And you're like, well, I could help you do that. You raise your hand and say, I'll help you do that. But you never know where things are going to lead. And I just think that's so important for women to really be aware of what we're doing. Do not minimize. Because everything that we're doing is so important and vital, and it will come back later in life, right? Like if you had said to me, hey, 10 years ago, 10 years from now, you're going to have a podcast, I'd be like, no way, what am I going to be talking about? But it just, things evolve, the world evolves, we as women evolve. And I think we just have to be open to what people are saying, right? Because people had said to me, you should do a podcast, you've got a great voice. And I thought, okay, great. What am I going to do it on? But then I realized, as this whole mom reinvention thing was brewing in my head, I realized, these stories need to be told, right? Of women who are doing these incredible things after raising kids or in the midst of raising kids. And I just want women to sort of walk around. Don't minimize what we do.
No.
Right?
Definitely not, because we are all guilty of doing that. I mean, just subconsciously. Right. And I'm glad that we're having this conversation because it's a good reminder. Yeah. It's a good reminder. And, for my male listeners too, we're talking a lot about women, we're talking a lot about moms, but for my male listeners too, this all applies.
Absolutely.
It all applies. I mean, I was just talking with a friend a couple weeks ago, who was talking about her husband and kind of this career plateau that he reached.
Guys reinvent too.
And how it's just left him really kind of miserable and his energy wrong, and how you have to kind of really, really listen when the universe is showing you that it's time to move into a different role.
Right.
And, I also think a big part of this is that you have to be willing to accept the crooked line. You have to be willing to accept that maybe when you set out to do your next thing, that doesn't really start here and then go in a straight line to there.
Of course. And everything is nonlinear. And that's, I think, the beauty of like your career, my career, is that it has been totally nonlinear.
Yes.
Right? You started in one thing, you dialed it back, you picked up something else, you dialed it back, but you're taking all of those things that you've learned, all of those competencies that you realize you have, and you're carrying them forward. And the same with men, right? You have men midlife who are like, I've been in this job for 25 years and it doesn't do it for me anymore.
Right.
And, it was funny that one of the first testimonials I ever got was from a guy.
Oh, that's so
who
interesting.
sat in on a workshop that I did, and he's like, you just kickstarted me into what I really want to do. So thank you for that.
Well, so that's wonderful. And you need somebody who's going to remind you how capable you are.
Right.
And someone who's going to believe in you, much like I felt about Lydia Finette, kind of, giving me the blessing of the ultimate live auctioneer goddess that I could do it too. And and I did. And I did the live auction for the Carlos Rodon Foundation. And, he's one of the starting pitchers for the Yankees. And his wife is a friend of mine. And I did their live auction at the Willow Gala. And I auctioned off, tickets to the Kelly Clarkson show to Aaron Judge and his wife. And, a whole room full of starting, players for the Yankees. And so it's really cool.
But also,
go ahead.
I was going to say, actually, I just had a moment.
Well, I don't want to interrupt you,
ahead.
but I want to go back really quick to our listener.
Okay.
Because she brought up another kind of segment of people that I want to talk about. And we addressed the people, men and women, who have accomplished what they set out to do and kind of like where to go now. But then there's also this segment of people who have not really gotten to the point that they really set out to get to. And they're sitting there feeling maybe disappointed in themselves or feeling like they've failed or any of those really negative feelings that are, by the way, guys, not healthy. Like drop those feelings, drop those feelings immediately. But what's your advice to those people in terms of a pivot and a second act?
So I think nothing is a failure. If you try something and you realize, you know what, that wasn't for me, to me, that is a victory because you have learned something about yourself and you realize, all right, that pathway just wasn't where I was supposed to be. And I think we have to have faith in ourselves and confidence in ourselves. And that's why baby steps are so, so important because it's sort of like you're not jumping off of a cliff and going, I am here. You're slowly pursuing whatever it is. And so I don't like the word failure. Failure is it is a perceived failure, right?
Perceived failure.
And that is coming from inside you, not from the outside world. And so, yeah, again,
that's exactly right.
Perceived failure.
A perceived failure. I think that's a great point because many of us might have dreams and aspirations and we may not be there. The listener who's listening and hasn't found the right partner yet.
Right.
Like that person might feel like I always wanted to have this and I'm not there yet. However, the path that person is on is intentional.
Absolutely.
The path is leading them to the right place and to the right person.
And I think, and the same goes for whatever it is you want your next chapter to be, right? You have to start small. You have to be intentional.
Yes.
And have a path, right? Have some sort of a guide path. But if things don't work out, you have learned. And I think the biggest failure in life, if you could call it that, is not trying.
That's entirely right.
Right?
That is entirely
we don't
right.
want to go
the biggest
through,
failure in life is not trying.
We don't want to get to the end of our lives and think, gee, I wonder what would have happened if I had fill in the blank.
Right.
And so take that leap of faith. Take that leap of faith in yourself and try something. And is it uncomfortable? Absolutely. But the uncomfortableness is telling you that maybe you're really onto something big.
That's right.
And there's an excitement that's in there. And, can it be scary? 100%. But sometimes you just have to have faith, trust in who you are and what you're doing, and take that leap and take it from there.
Yes. I think also you have to really look within your local community.
Start local.
You can
Yeah.
start local.
Start little, start local.
Which, I mean, there are just so many things that are right at your fingertips, no matter where you live.
Right.
And, you know, if you don't have time to be at home and volunteer or meet people for lunch or whatever it might be and invest in yourself in that way, if you're working a full-time job,
Right.
there are other places there as well that you can start small and try maybe a different role or there's so many different things I think that we can do.
Well, yeah. I mean, even if you have a full-time job, you're working, 40, 50, whatever hours a week, if there's something that is, you know what it is, it's already in your heart, it's already in your brain, and you've been thinking about X, and explore that, right? Allow yourself that grace that we talked about earlier
Yes.
to explore that, because you never know where something is going to grow from and where it will take you to. And so I think women, and we're all, listen, I'm raising my hand too. We're all like that. We're like, we want to get it done yesterday. I'm too old. I'm too late. It's never going to happen. Wrong. I mean,
And these are limiting beliefs.
100%.
I would say limiting beliefs are at the heart, the core of the reason we don't
Right.
reinvent ourselves and we don't move to that next chapter, because we think that we don't have what it takes or we think that we're not worthy. And I get that. I
wanna
understand that.
But I want to kick that attitude.
I want to kick that
the
attitude
curb.
too.
Yeah.
But I think I felt a lot of that. I think I have felt a lot of that since I've come back after having my kids. I think more so than I ever did before I had kids. And I was in like the crazy time of my career on all the red carpets and interviewing
Right.
celebrities and on the Wendy Williams show and the Today Show and flying to LA to do Chelsea Lately's panel. And I was doing a lot of big things, but I kind of always felt like I deserved a seat at the table, weirdly enough. And now I'm kind of like, oh, but who am I? Like, do people really want to hear what I have to say? And I'm working on that. You
They
know,
do.
I'm working on that all the time with my big event, That Greenwich Life Live.
Right.
I talked about it in the second episode of this season. I talked about when we stretch ourselves.
Yeah. And you know what? It doesn't
it's scary.
just- it is scary.
And we tend to doubt ourselves, but we have to knock that off.
And we doubt ourselves because we're afraid we're going to fail, right? Use that word again. But I think if the more we believe in who we are and listen to those, the fairy dust that's being sprinkled around us,
Yes.
that we have to have that faith in ourselves to move forward. I mean, I have interviewed women who have started from scratch at the age of 50. You know, women who became, world champions in athletic events in their late 60s. I mean, these women are like superheroes to me. And there are so many amazing stories of women who have, started on one path and then totally changed. And also, don't let what you are now define what you could be. I interviewed a wonderful woman named Joan Hornig, who was in finance. And 9/11 happened. She dialed it back. She wanted to be with her girls because she's like, life is way too short. And she took a beading class with one of her girls and realized she has this like inner artsy girl. She's now a jewelry designer.
Oh, wow.
And created a philanthropy model that didn't exist before. And so every time you buy some of her jewelry, you will make a donation to a charity of a nonprofit of your choice. So it all of a sudden makes you a philanthropist as well.
Wow.
And so but these were women who were like much older when they started these. And these journeys, I think, are so inspiring. So anyone who's thinking, I'm too old, I can't do it. I mean, like, no. I mean, I'm over 60, okay? We'll just leave it at that.
But also, if you're watching on YouTube, your jaw just dropped because Sharon has the nicer skin. I told you this than many 20-year-olds that I know.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. I'll tell my facialist that. Thank
Yes.
you. And there are so many opportunities out there for us to just reinvent, rediscover who we are, what it is that we really want to do. And that's why keeping sort of a note app, just write down your thoughts, write down, I thought I did whatever it was with someone else and I found that really interesting. And maybe that is an avenue to go down. But again, I want women to sort of draw on the skills that they have or that they have been honing, while they're working, while they're raising a family, And those are invaluable. And I believe that those skills can change the world.
Well, on that note, we are running out of time,
No,
which is
it's
always
going so fast.
I know it goes so fast. But I'd love to thank you, Sharon, for coming, being a guest today. This was an awesome topic. Check out Sharon's podcast, Mom to More, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcasts. And also, she's on Instagram at Mom to More, and her website is momtomore.com. Very clean branding. I love it. Thank you also to my amazing sponsors, RMA of New York, and also Constantino's. Constantino's of Greenwich. If you guys haven't already tried it, like, you have to. We did for my son's birthday. We ordered, I forget, like 8 pies or something for 8 kids. And I'm telling you, we did not have a lot left over. It's one of our absolute favorite places to do like a quick weeknight dinner. And it's a great community staple here in Greenwich. But also, I'm so appreciative to all of you for tuning in. It is so awesome week in and week out to be able to have this platform and to be able to share all of these really important topics. I'm so glad that today we were able to address something that came directly from all of you and from so many of you. We really have, it's crazy because at That Greenwich Life Live on November 19th, when I looked through all of the suggestions that people had, the top 3 were menopause and perimenopause, which if you guys scroll back to episode 3 of this season, you can hear the awesome conversation that I had with my guest, Lauren Tettenbaum, and she wrote an amazing book, The Millennial Menopause. And the other one, which I said was about the girlfriends and navigating friendships at this age, and then this one. And so we have a lot more in store coming up. Next week is actually going to be an episode that, it's going to be a tough one, but this has been something that people have been asking for and we have not been talking enough about. It's a little bit icky. It's a little bit uncomfortable. It's definitely sad in many ways, but it's important that we talk about it. Oprah just dedicated an episode of her podcast to it. It's family estrangement. And it's something that I'm going to be a bit more transparent about. It's a secondary trauma in my first trauma of all of my infertility and my loss and all of those things. So it's a conversation that I think will help a lot of you, even though it's hard to have. So we're going to talk about that next week. So definitely tune back in. But anyway, you can always follow along with everything else that is going on at Dorothy on TV on Instagram and also on my website, DorothyOnTV.com. You can watch the show on YouTube, and also you can shop That Greenwich Life merch on my website, which is really fun. There's a little merch tab if you want some fun, like white and pink TGL gear. We have like everything under the sun.
I'm going to have to check that out.
It's really fun.
Like that.
It's really fun. So anyway, thank you to all of you for tuning in. I'm so excited to be here. It is my privilege to be here. And until next week, remember, don't just live your life, love it. I'll see you next week, guys.
Thank you to our Season 2 That Greenwich Life presenting sponsor, RMA of New York. RMA of New York is a full-service fertility center that offers fertility testing, IVF, egg freezing, male reproductive medicine, and LGBTQ family building. And with 14 clinics across Manhattan, Brooklyn, Westchester, and Long Island, they make expert care accessible. RMA of New York is changing lives and helping so many of us write our next chapter. Visit rmany.com for more info.